All right, guys, welcome back to our monthly chats with Andrew Smith, our behavior tutor extraordinaire. And today we're talking about some of those mid-year behavior strategies that every educator is going to need. Right now, we're trying to get back in the swing of things. Everybody's had their winter break. Then we have testing. Then we just have, MLK Junior day off. And so the routine is still not like 100% back to normal, I don't think. So that's why we're going to go over some strategies to help us make sure that we can do our best to set your students up for success in academics and, of course, with their behaviors. So, welcome, Andrew.
Thanks. It's good to be here. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah, the inconsistency in the schedule part is right on. We had our first week back was only 4 days, and we're 5 day
Right.
week school, and then that was 4 days because we had the teacher work day and we needed it, and then we had a
Yeah.
week and Martin Luther King Day, and so we got a work day for that. We didn't get that one off, and then this week we ended up 3 days because we have a cold day today, which -25. It's fair.
Yes.
That's
That's
the like
valid for
automatic
sure.
like nose freeze weather, and like, okay, yeah, that works. So inconsistency in schedule is one big thing that can be just hard to nail down, especially when everything's out of our control, right? The schedules and everything, and the kids are still probably. I don't know if any of y'all or if you, Mrs. B, got some weirdness with the with having a we had a honeymoon right when we got back, and then the next week is when everybody felt like the whole week I was like feeling and thinking that we were gonna fall apart, and everybody did amazing, and then like come Monday of the
Yeah.
following week or Tuesday, and it was done. It was like a sugar crash. Just like,
Yeah.
whoo, that was rough getting through that. So it's been a little bit weird getting back into some sort of arrangement or a semblance of.
Right.
So the biggest part is trying to ground yourself in your classroom routines and just um I was talking with a group of teachers uh last Tuesday, and we were talking about just if we find that there's some different things happening, grounding ourselves in the skills and not assuming that they remember what that skill is or how to use that skill. So
Right.
going back and teaching your basic classroom routines, basic expectations, if you're a PBIS school, what your three R's are, or whatever it is with the PBIS
Right.
expectations. So ground yourself in those things because those can be the consistency when we have all of the storms, like literally and figuratively, that are happening around us, right? So
Yeah.
those become that clear, consistent routines. Uh, and that will be comforting. Some of our kids probably don't like that, right? I mean, I was one of those
No.
kids who was like, sorry, that's not for me, but I needed it, and that was the biggest part.
Right. That's so true, right? They've just been so used to doing whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it, getting up to eat, getting up to take a drink, switching whatever. And, we were kind of the same. The kids started in the middle of the week. We had a couple days, and then we actually had a snow day that Friday. So they were only there a couple days. And then the next week we had a late start, and then we had, you know, the testing, like I said. So the kids have all kind of been off, but um, for the most part, our students did really well doing the testing. So that was really good. And kind of getting back in the swing of things. We had one student, he just loves to lay in the hallway on the carpet. He's like done. He don't want to be there. I don't want to do it. Um, so we
It's
just
a
kind of wait him out, and
nap
he
time.
usually gets back in gets back into class. But he's definitely a hard one to keep motivated.
Absolutely.
But so what's another strategy that teachers can use to keep their kids or get their kids back on track?
Well, absolutely. And so I have this like analogy, and I don't know if it works fully, right? Of like this is like a car trip, right? So we're pulling
Right.
in, we're regassing up because we got halfway there, right? Halfway to Sheboygan or something like that.
Yeah.
I think Bugs Bunny used to say that. Um, so we got to regas, right? So that's kind of getting our routines going again, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, check your oil, make sure all of the fundamental parts of the car are working, right? So
Hmm.
the processes in class, walking through the halls. I mean, I work mainly K-6. I've been up at the middle school and man, it's a different beast in secondary, right? So just ratcheting down some hallway expectations, things like that can make a wonder because then how you're receiving them and how they're coming in can be a whole different deal.
Right.
But sometimes that also means mixing up your rewards, and maybe trying something new as far as like those rewards go. So can you do, there's a school that I've worked with off and on that does double punch Wednesdays. So for all of their PBIS or any of their reward systems, they earn like either double punches, double scores, something like that. There's some different intermittent rewards and intermittent reinforcement that can happen. So it's happening at different ratios just to keep everybody kind of on their toes, as it were, right? Like if you randomly got a
Right.
popcorn day or, pajama day. I mean, I don't know, 41 years old and I'm working for those, right?
Right.
So I'm good with that. And then just having a little bit, just knowing, and this is the hard part, knowing when to balance, when to shift, and when to stay the course, right? Do we
Right.
do we take the scenic route or do we stay on the highway? Sometimes we want to go for the scenic route. We wheel it. Used to be we'd wheel in that movie cart, and we just lower the expectations for the day, right?
Yeah.
Or we stick on the highway and we just kind of roll through because we know we got to get through testing next week. And we're in the testing windows for right now. It feels like after we come back from winter break, we're always in the testing window, but
Yeah.
those are some different parts that can really just help sort of revitalize everything.
Right.
For some of your older kids, a kind of a cool way that I've seen people do this is then give some of the different groups. If you don't have your room assigned in groups, then maybe look at different pods or group formations, things like that. But
Hmm.
assign them a topic or part of the topic to then figure out how to teach that to the class. So giving them some of that power, and it's a little bit more of a project-based learning style. But
Uh-huh.
sometimes that gives it just enough of a novelty and empowerment to be able to then change things up and how they look at it and then they build a little bit of empathy for teachers of like that
Right.
ain't easy to get up there in front of everybody, let alone when you've got like 15 other teenagers or preteens or like fourth graders that are like picking their
Right.
nose at you and not listening. Like they get to see that other side of it. But you also get to see the really amazing creativity that a lot of kids have. Um, beware, it's a group assignment at that point. We all know how those things go, right?
Yeah.
If you've got four in a group, that means two or three are doing the work. And there's
Yes.
always one Kramer
Slacker.
out there is what I always think, like from Seinfeld, right? It's just
Yeah.
great idea person, but then putting it in practice a little. So just a few different ways to kind of shake things up within you're still in your environment in your routines, but it can bring enough novelty to keep kids kind of inspired and working and focused.
Yeah, that's great. And it's really great to see them shine, when they get to do that and stand up and share, their creativity is really, really cool to see that. So I definitely encourage that. Another reconnection strategy I think we've talked about in the past is that 2 by 10 in spending 2 minutes with students for 10 days and just reconnecting with them and not about their behaviors or their academics, but just about them as a person and kind of like their likes and dislikes and things like that. What do you think about that, Andrew?
I love that because it's just reinvesting in kids and reconnecting that. And
Yeah.
we talk all the time about reconnecting or connecting,
Connecting.
but
Right.
there's just so much that happens over a short period of time for kids. It's the beautiful thing about kids is there's so much growth that happens within a year if you think about it, like 9 months
Yeah.
from like August through May-ish, right? Or June,
Yeah.
depending on where you live in and how far you go and how many snow days. But honestly, like the amount of growth that we see from kids is truly amazing.
Yeah.
But that also means that they're ever evolving people and they're adjusting and their
Right.
fluidity with how they feel about things and come into contact with different concepts and how they make sense of that. They're growing people and we all grow to a certain extent, but there is just such a rapid growth that happens within such a short amount of time that it truly spending 2 minutes to figure out how a kiddo is feeling about, I don't know, their favorite dessert. Is it brownies this time or is it that? That can mean a
Right.
world of difference for a kid who maybe that is something that's on the biggest on their mind. And maybe it's some other things that they truly feel like nobody's listening or feeling heard about.
Yeah.
I had a kiddo I talked with the other day and been seeing that he was feeling down, or just kind of had that look. And I told him, I was like, I know we
Right.
don't know each other very well, but you look like you're either tired or sad or just that something's eating at you. And he shared
Right.
about how he's growing his hair out for a certain reason, and people are giving him some junk and some flack about cutting it.
Hmm.
And he's like, I don't need help with it. It's just I don't like it, but it's nice to be able to at least like say it out loud. I was like,
Right.
okay, yeah, let's talk about that for a couple minutes, man. Sounds like they're doing something, they're feeling a certain way about things and they're not doing it right. And so it's just being able to connect with them. And those are those minutes that when we have them with coworkers, they mean the world to us. Well, kids
Right.
need that too. They're mini humans.
Yeah.
And just can dial in some of those different aspects of them that they're growing and wrestling with and things to celebrate and things that they're finding for challenges too.
Yes. I love that because you give them an opportunity. Most kids, they love to share. They want to tell you, their favorite color or the favorite part of their break or whatever it is. Most kids they love to talk about that. And there's some kids, yeah, it's a little bit harder to kind of have that conversation, and so sometimes it's not going to last 2 minutes. But that's okay because you still made that intentional connection to try and talk with them, and they know that, so they know you're still taking time to show that you care about them, whether or not they decide to, you know, tell you everything in 2 minutes. Some kids will, and others will want 10 minutes, to keep talking and telling you.
Absolutely.
Um, but, don't give up on those who give you, just the one word answers.
Yeah,
It's just like, okay, well, thanks for talking with me,
you're chipping away.
and let them, yeah, go about their way. But so another strategy that I saw also is the 3 point de escalation routine. I think these are all things that we've talked about, but now it's, this one's kind of reworded and where it just talks about, validating, how they're feeling, really giving them a voice and a choice, and then helping them to return back to, they say, baseline. So
Yeah,
they rejoin, the routine. And this one, unfortunately, I've seen some teachers struggle with that rejoin and kind of rehashing everything again. But other times I've seen teachers just say, "Hey, I'm glad you're back," and integrate them back in, or they just walk back in and do what they need to do. So, what are your thoughts about that, Andrew?
I love it. I'm always a big, just the counselor base in me of like validation. And remember, I just want to just want to put that with a caveat that validation doesn't mean that you're accepting or like saying that that's acceptable. You're just validating that that's where they're at, right? I recognize you're there,
Yeah,
right? You know, I may not want my chicken Alfredo, but I accept that you like chicken Alfredo, right? I hate
yeah,
broccoli, but I can validate you in that, yeah, broccoli is a good thing for you, right? At least
Yeah.
my wife tells me I'm required to tell our kids that so they eat their broccoli. Um,
Good job.
but so there's the validation, and we all want at least to be heard. And I think we can all agree, most of us, even the kids, can agree that we're not going to agree on things, and
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's nice that somebody's there sitting with you to validate and recognize that I am being heard, right? I am not too much for somebody to handle, or this is not too much for somebody to handle.
Hmm.
And then anytime you can restore choices, and it doesn't have to be the original. Hold on to that thought for a second. Giving people choice always feels good. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to relate to choice unless you're in back in kind of this is a result of a power struggle. And then I would say that's related back to what the original choice was. So if this is somebody who is just struggling with emotions throughout the day, giving them choice for how they want to use a coping skill.
Mm.
It could be a lot of different choices. There can be a lot of options. If this was
Right.
a result of a power struggle or some sort of compliance thing or some
Hmm.
authority checking, things like that, then I would probably give the choice back to that within the realm of those things of like, well, you know, we said a few things to Mrs. B. How do you think that we might be able to let her know that you're ready to return? Right.
Yeah.
And so the idea is the expectation is that you're going to show Mrs. B that you're ready to return. Could it be a verbal apology? Could it be a written one? Could you tell me and I'll write it for you? Could you
Hmm.
tell Mrs. B that you're ready for it, just ready to return? And
Right.
then there can be a follow-up later, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or something like that. Um, and then that can help guide how that teacher reintegrates them in the classroom as well. So it gives
Oh, yeah.
both of them kind of that frame for that, because then even if it's an emotion-based example with like the coping skills, then you can give that, you can launch them into there being like, hey, let's go let Mrs. B know that I think that her using her calming corner is what you chose, and be really cool if you did that. So if it's compliance based, then how you're going to reconnect through how do you want to let Mrs. B know that you're ready? That kind of helps give everybody kind of that framework back in. And there are some kids that we have some specialized ways of doing that, and that are written into like behavior intervention plans or IEPs. But really just having that conversation of like, let how do we let her know? Could that be writing it down, writing an apology, saying an apology? You tell me and I'll write. Maybe it's picking 5 minutes or an hour later or tomorrow to talk about what happened to process
Right.
it. And if it's more of that emotional base where it was just hard containing emotions or maybe something affected somebody, then being able to have that conversation of like, well, let's let Mrs. B know that you're ready to use her calming corner. And so just say, hey, I need to use the calming corner and walk over there
Mhm.
and then set your timer and go through that process. And that just gives everybody a frame of mind of what to expect, but also the reconnect of like, we're going to communicate again. We're going to be back in our presence and everything's going to be good. That accepting nature. Um,
Right.
and I tell teachers and staff all the time is like, with very rare exceptions, there's always going to be another chance to talk about it. So
Yeah.
give a little bit of time. If you forget, that's fine. That's probably a probably a good thing in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
Um, but there are
For
times
sure.
where I've forgotten, and then I see the kid again, like, look, I want to apologize, and it's blown me away, like how many times that's happened. Of like they want to come back and process with you because they know that you're going to be that safe person, right? So the 3 points is, I think that's a great, and it's an easier way to think of it than sometimes our CPI or our MANT trainings or
Yeah.
things like that, where they have a process, and I understand the process, but really the 3 points, the validation, choice, and return and reconnect are very key processes of any of those two.
Right. As far as choice, like I go back to, and I've shared before on the podcast, like sometimes giving a choice, it could be, like you said, the coping skills, what works for them. Do they want to try this or this? And then sometimes getting them back to doing their work, like so we are able to just say, okay, do you want to sit here at this table or do you want to sit at that table? Do you want to use a pen or a pencil? If you're able to have that choice, or picking a specific pencil. Sometimes kids have certain pencils they love. Sometimes I think giving a choice can be little, and I feel like those little choices really can make a difference with a lot of students. I know sometimes teachers think, oh, we have to give them a choice when, they have work to do, and, there's a structure they have, the way they have to do it, that it's not really that aspect of the choice. But again, when they're back in class, maybe they have an option of sitting at their desk or sitting on the carpet. Those little things can help, I believe, make a difference as far as choices.
Yeah,
What do you think about
absolutely.
those?
I agree with you on that. And so many times it's like, okay, we'll give him a choice. It's like, well, I'm not going to let him choose not to work. Like, no,
Yeah,
I'm not saying that. Like, yeah, we got to get our work done before fun.
exactly.
It's something I tell kids all the time.
Yeah,
But there's so many different things, like you said, that we can give choice over. Like,
yeah.
I even broke it down to, I had this fourth grader, oh, it was probably 6, 7 years ago, who he's like, I have no choice. I have to take this test. I have no control over that. I was like, oh, dude,
Mm,
you got control.
right.
It's just in a little different way. I was like, there's nothing that says you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Skip around a little bit. Why not? And he just looked at
Right.
me like I was crazy. Like, why wouldn't I do 1, 2, 3? I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. The ADHD in me would be like, I don't know that one. I don't know that one. Let's skip to 9 because that one's easy, right? And
Yeah.
that's a common test taking strategy too. But just it,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it hadn't occurred to him that that can be another control piece when he felt like he had no control in certain aspects of his life. He could reassert it. I was like,
Right.
absolutely. And I was like, and honestly, this kid's writing ability was really high. I was like, it's going to tell you to write in 4 sentences, but I bet you could write down in three exactly what you need to say and blow her out of the water with it. Right.
Yeah.
And then I talked to the teacher about that, and she's like, yeah, absolutely. For him to get a 4 or an A or whatever her metric was, she's like, when he writes and he's focused on that, it's like he says what he needs to in half the required time. So, but it was just the fact that he had not thought of where he could exert different means of control and feel like he
Right.
had some choice and ease some of the anxiety and some of the frustration and anger about other areas where he didn't have control.
Right.
There's a key part of that with our trauma kids, our anxiety kids,
Yeah.
even some of our spectrum kids, where they're black
Yeah.
and white, kind of go no go thinking, can be related to whether they have their own control over things and be able to conceptualize that for them.
Yes, for sure. I mean, like you said, they're mini adults, and we as adults love being able to have choices and decide on certain things. Now, granted, obviously, there is a structure and there is a system, that we have to use when we're in school. But, giving that choice really gives them, empowers them as much as possible while they're at school. Because, like we were saying, the trauma kids, they don't always have any choice, when they go home. And obviously, we have no control over that. But how do we help your students succeed? And if you're able to, giving them those choices, I think is really important for some of your students for sure. What do you think about having visuals in the classroom, on desks,
Um,
wherever? What are your
there's a
thoughts?
lot of kids that require and visualize to
Yeah.
visuals to help them visualize. It's something, and the statistics change depending on who you read about how many people are visual thinkers. My
Right.
wife, she shares freely that she says she has no imagination, but really it's hard for her to visualize independently, is what she's described to
Uh,
me. And
Okay.
here I am, I'm the daydreamer where I could just like zone out and I'm
Yeah.
back in Lord of the Rings, like running through the Shire, going through, everything with
Yeah.
Samwise Gamgee and all that. So I think they help. There are times when it does get overwhelming though.
Mm.
So I would just put the caveat on there of just make sure you hit your main points on visuals. They can be so
Yeah.
helpful for kids. Like I have a lot of kids that work checklist base of like,
Right.
if you get
Yeah.
done, you can check this, check this. For your
Yeah.
binder at the end of the day, you need this, this, and this, right? Or
Yeah.
your coping skills are this, this, and this. I have an arrival menu that a kid chooses from so he could do this or that or another, like four. Boiled it down to four basic choices, with
Right.
two in class and two at his alternate work location, depending on what happened as he's coming into school. Right. And so
Uh-huh.
trying to make sure that it's not overwhelming is a big thing because a lot of our neurodivergent friends, if they're visual based thinking, they can be overwhelmed more with visual, not
Mm.
just the auditory
Mm-hmm.
input that they get too. So if there's, it's kind of the paralysis by analysis of like too many choices,
Right.
I get no
Yeah.
choice, right? So
Yeah.
just make sure that you're trying to stick to fundamentals of what it is, and if there's any parts that you feel like you have to go more than maybe a sentence, let's say, then that just means that we need to take some time to teach that skill a little bit deeper.
Mm.
Is what I would say.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid point, is having too many visuals. Um, I definitely can think of some classrooms going in there and being overwhelmed myself, like, whoa.
It's like straight up
Um,
Pinterest, right? There's
yeah.
that wall, I can see that board, I can see that board,
Yeah.
and like, and what's the flavor of the month or the season that we're in, and it's just, whew.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which is
Looks great
great.
for a minute, and
Yeah,
then you're like, whoa.
I admire the like dedication and creativity that some people have for that because that is definitely not me. I'm a Pinterest fail kind of dude. But just
Uh,
understand that like there's gonna be kids who are gonna love that and it's gonna be their jam, and then there's gonna be maybe 40% of your students who are more visual that might be a little bit much for them. So there's a
yeah.
balance point to it.
Right. This isn't really visual, but as far as like, I'm thinking of lights. Like that's a different type of that affects visuals. That a
Yeah,
lot of classrooms nowadays, like they don't keep their lights on full, like 100% of the time. Majority of classrooms now have like half on, half off, or they have different lighting throughout the room. They'll have just lamp stands or even just the little lamps. And I think that really has helped. And that can definitely dim down some of those visuals if you have a lot, in your classroom. That can kind of help with that little overload as well, dimming the lights. Do you actually see more of that nowadays too?
I do, and I respond better to it. I've noticed.
Yeah.
You think about what the a lot of the schools I've worked in are like wonderful 1970s architecture and infrastructure and
Right.
everything like that. So the old halogen and like neon lights and things
Yeah.
like that they use there's also the hum that came from them.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, so you get the
Bad.
flicker and things like that, and what they're finding, and especially in like just to think of it in a step back, in like OSHA approved places, is that there's a
Yeah.
lot of leaching that happens for certain minerals and things like that, from workers, just period, just any of the adults around us. Um, from being underneath those lights for too long. And so what are they doing for our kids? We have to assume that it's at least something like that. Plus the humming, and plus we know that different shifts of light produce different reactions in our body and behaviors accordingly, right? So
Mm.
being able to produce those mellow and those very, I always call it the chill zones, right?
Yeah.
Of taking out some of those different shifts in light and having more lamp-based things and I know my background's or fuzzy, but that we have lights down here because the overheads have
Oh,
different
yeah.
effects with me and my kids, and they're not even halogen anymore. Like I took those out, but just
Yeah.
the fact that you could have that warm lighting, um, helps increase focus, helps calm nervous systems because it's an interesting thing that there are some lights that will work on different frequencies for what they produce, and kids have an easier ability to hear at different frequencies than us old fogies. They used to, for a while there, they had that it was like a ringtone that was at a certain hertz that like they said it was like somebody over 40 or 45 couldn't hear it. And so for a while there's people trying to play with that, but they also know that changes brain waves and how the brain reacts to things too. So it's just another added
Wow.
stimulation too that can be that way. And if you have visual people, they're preferring visual input. When you have harsher lighting, they have to contend with more input. The research under it is fascinating. It's one of those areas I'd love to dive deeper into because there's like color choice too that factors into
Oh,
it.
right. Hmm.
So what colors are you using? Harsher colors, warmer colors? Are they from a certain part of the spectrum as far as are they in the red spectrum? Things like that. Complementary, contrasting.
Huh.
When it's so interesting the effect that it has on the unconscious part of our brain or the more of the automated part of our brains um, that really can affect the overall functioning of our body and our focus and our psyche. So I'm a fan of just the softer, cooler lights. They
Yeah.
tend to have a little bit more focus, and yeah, classroom might be busy, but the overall aggression level or overall frustration
Hmm.
level that happens
Yeah.
can be lower too.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I feel like it definitely helps the teachers as well. Like they're not feeling that angst and that bright, excuse me, all of what you just explained. I don't want to repeat everything you just said, but that it's also good for teachers. I think it has a positive effect on them as well.
If we take care of our teachers, they don't usually eat the kids, so that's always a good thing.
Exactly. Chocolate, low lights, all good to go. Oh, coffee.
Coffee.
And coffee.
Absolutely.
Another one strategy I came across is helping those students that come back and who are maybe kind of on the edge of some of these challenging behaviors, or maybe it's just, now they're starting to show maybe some aggression or refusal or avoidance, or maybe they're just overwhelmed with emotion. What are your thoughts on doing like a mini type of behavior chart or a behavior plan for those students? They're not necessarily on IEPs, but those who you think maybe like they're coming back and they're not quite ready or they're struggling in this area. What do you think about that?
Well, I think for one thing, it's not a bad idea. And if anything, it gives you data. So there's going to be some kids that are going to respond very well and there are going to be some that it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. But generally, if you get into a problem solving meeting or an RTI meeting or an MTSS meeting or whichever system you're using, they're going to want to know what you've tried first. And so it not only gives you a chance to track behaviors to start figuring out some data about when this might be happening, either through the day, through the week, in a very general sense. And it also tells you about because all those are based on reward systems too, right? There should be
Right,
identifiable goals that you
right.
define what I'm looking for, and then providing a subsequent reward, right? To then give them an optional other behavior, replacement behavior, and seeing how successful that is, right? And it can be a very general thing of like, if they're blurting a lot, are they raising their hand, let's say? So,
Hmm.
a very simple instance where you don't have to reteach necessarily a whole lot, but you're starting to provide a replacement behavior and see if that's needed enough, right? The simple
Right.
replacement and reward that comes with that. And so
Yeah.
then you've got a fixed system of what it's defined as, what a simple reward could be that's within your classroom. That's most teachers have a system that they would use that's practical for them. But when it escalates, then you can give that over to if you have an instructional coach, if you have an AP in your class or your class in your building, hopefully
Yeah.
not in your class all the time. I mean, they're fun to drop by, but you know,
Right.
um, or the counselor or whoever handles your RTI, MTSS, or response level meetings, then that gives them a chance to know where the basis is, and you've got a definition of it that you can start using. You've got some simple rewards and interventions that you've started using, and simple being that just it's you delivering something. It's not a couple different people coming in from a support stance, unless
Right.
that's part of that's a practical way for you to do that. Um, and so then you're able to then launch them from there if there seems to be a need for a tier two intervention with like a group or a more individualized intervention from there that might require a little bit more from your support staff or that the kids might require more for.
Yeah.
So, um, and there's a lot of teachers who do an amazing thing with that. There's a lot of data trackers that can help make it very simply for like, as simple as you can anyway. A lot of districts will have their own like um, programs or things they partner apps that they partner with or systems that they use for that that can help try and help make it more practical. But it just gives you a different way to define it, to reinforce it, and help them from
Right.
starting the classroom level and working out from there.
Yeah, I agree. Because then, like you said, you can find that antecedent and maybe a specific time of day, that behavior is popping up. And it really does make a difference. Like we used to really keep track of that at our previous school, and it really was helpful, especially like at parent teacher conferences or just for teachers, to communicate that and get as much support from families as well is important too. And most kids love to get a little reward, and whether you do that at the end of the day or the end of the week, or maybe they're working for something big, or kids always love that.
Yep.
So I definitely agree. Like collecting data is super important as well, to help those kids. And like you said, reteaching skills. We can't take for granted that they already know, like they shouldn't be blurting out every 5 seconds. Um, but some kids, like, the one class that I'm in, like kids, they do. That's just what they do all day long. And then the teacher's talking, and like I'm not really sure what's happening here. Like the kids are talking the whole time, the teacher's trying to teach, and like nothing is happening. And
Yeah. And
so,
sometimes we get acclimated to then everybody else is starting to just because that's the
yeah,
environment where it happens and the classroom sometimes acclimates to just that and the teacher acclimates to that. I mean, like, I don't know why I'm so tired. Like, well, I was just
yeah,
observing in your room and man, there's like 15 call outs right there. Like that was crazy. I was only there for 5 minutes.
yeah, right?
So,
And it's like, oh
um,
my gosh.
yeah. But the
But
lagging,
anyways,
yeah, gives you a chance to address lagging skills more than anything.
yeah, yeah. Because, again, overall, behavior strategies are something that you are constantly teaching. You're constantly modeling. It's
Absolutely.
definitely not a one and done, right? That'd be
Usually not.
nice, right? Of course, I'd be out of a job if it was just one and done. But
Same. And what I tell people is like we didn't get here in a day. We probably didn't get here in a year.
right,
So once
right.
again, so much growth happens, but it's not going to be in a day. And I hope it's less than a year, but this might be a little bit longer of a trek depending on what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Andrew, again, I thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise that you get to share with us here. Do you have any parting words for us?
Just stock up on the coffee for the testing season and let's roll.
Exactly. Well, you guys are amazing and you're doing amazing work. And I know we are on what it would be the downside of the mountain, right? Or are we still kind of up, maybe a little bit? But we're getting there, and you're doing an amazing job. So keep up the great work. Your students need you. And thank you so much, Andrew, for being here. And hopefully we can reconnect again next month.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate your support. And if I have encouraged you, motivated you to continue to learn, to support your students, even better, to help them strive in your classroom, please leave a review, hit that subscribe button so that others can see they can learn and grow here as well. Thank you.